Hey, this is Ryan Williamson with Sourwood Farm. I'm at my favorite out yard. This is actually at my parents' in a place called Sugar Hollow here in Central Virginia. And I love it because we get hot summers and this place is nice and shady in the summer as soon as the afternoon comes. The only downside is that if I have a swarm, they go way up there into that gum tree is like swarm magnet. As a kid, I remember climbing up it to cut swarms out and drop them down to my dad, or I'd be down below and he'd be climbing up. It was so dangerous. But yeah, anyway, yesterday I was here working bees, doing mite washes, and picking out colonies that I've been monitoring for a while as potential breeders. And the ones I liked, I took frames of brood, cat brood, home to do a Harbo assay where I opening up the brood and seeing how many mites are reproducing in the pupa. And just wanted to share some results from that. Always curious, I took colonies, I should say, I took brood from colonies I liked and also brood from colonies I was concerned about. And there's always surprises in that when you open up the brood and see what's going on inside the colony. And thought I'd share a little bit of that. We'll just look at a few colonies here. This colony did just fantastic this year, really gentle. Just really nice. Mite washes were not too bad. In July, I had a mite wash of 1, and then later in August, the mites climbed to 4, yesterday, I should say. Here we are, this is August 26th today, so yesterday. But when I took the brood and opened it up, I found no reproductive mites. So that's cool, right? Not too bad. These colonies had issues swarming, whatever, so I didn't want to deal with them for mite washes, for potential breeding stock until I know how they are. This is one I requeened early in the spring with my number 85 breeder. And mite wash yesterday was 5, but going in the brood, no reproductive mites. Harbo 4, nice. This one's aggressive, I need to requeen it. Another one for my 85 breeder, and mite wash in July, 0. Mite wash yesterday, 1. Going into the brood, found no reproductive mites in 200 cells, so that's pretty great. Then we come over to this one, and mite wash was 2 in July, and yesterday I got 13. It's like, oh no, what's going on? This is not good. But I also had notes that I saw a lot of hygienic action on drone brood with this colony, and that the brood was awesome. Like, they produce a lot of honey, gentle, just so many other elements that I like. So I went ahead and brought a frame of brood back, and I go into the capped brood, the pupa that are getting along in age, and all I could find was non-reproductive mites. So best guess on my end is that this colony brought mites in from somewhere, but they're not letting them reproduce. So in theory, they could handle the mites on their own. I'll watch it and see. I'm not going to requeen this one. Speaking of bringing mites from somewhere, this one had, holy moly, the worst mite wash I've had in a long time. 33. And yeah, really scary. This was a colony that swarmed a few times in the spring, so they had massive genetic shift in a way that I was not able to control. and yeah, they're aggressive. They're really unpleasant to work, and terrible mite wash. And what do you know? I go in the brood, and like every other cell is a reproductive mite, and you see all the baby mites. So yeah, they're getting requeened. I've got a queen here that I raised at home in a little mating nuke, and I'm going to go in and find this queen and get rid of her and requeen. This colony's booming, super good population, unknown genetics, and the mite wash in July was 2, mite wash yesterday's 2, so it's like, hey, that's good. But I go in the brood and I'm finding reproductive mites. Not that many, just a few, but enough for me to go, okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump the gun and requeen it now to get stock in there that I know comes from hygienic. And I think that's important because that sets me one step ahead for breeding next year. And I'm finding that if I'm more proactive in that regard, I get better results. As an example, this year, I've already, in just this one little bee yard, gotten as many hygienic colonies with a Harbo score of 4 that show no total mite resistance as I got in my entire operation last year. I mean, that's exciting, just to be really pushing that envelope. I mean, it might be pure luck, but I feel like really making sure I always add queens from genetics that are good, and if shown resistance is helping push my bees in the right direction. They'll never be perfect, but it sure is better than constantly treating. I obviously will, well, I make the decision that these colonies with high loads, I am going to treat. Colonies I don't like for other reasons, I go ahead and just treat those, because living colonies allow me to have healthy bees next year for selling as nukes, for making honey, all the things that actually pay our family's bills, since this is my living. I think doing selective treating along with breeding in an IPM way, so in other words, if they can hold the pest down, I don't treat. But if they cannot hold the pest down, then I do treat. But I also change the genetics over to something that hopefully will hold the pest down next time around. So it's a bit more work, but I feel like it's really starting to pay off in some ways. So this bee yard years ago, I remember I would find sac brood, EFB looking symptoms, by this time of year, PMS sometimes, even with treating. And this year, they look great. It's just really awesome. So, and that's without having treated almost all these hives at all in the, since last Christmas. Those are my thoughts and kind of my current strategy. Might change in the future, who knows? But that's the fun of playing with bees. They're just always an endless challenge, and I just can't say how much I enjoy the challenge and the fascination of seeing what's going on. And yeah, whoo-wee. Well, they finally calmed down. I just got out of the bees and was able to find both queens fairly quickly, which was so nice. First colony, it was first frame, there she is. Second colony, second frame, there she is. Turns out marked queens are a lot easier to find, right? And yeah, so that was really nice. I was thinking while I was working that I have 2 hives here that were showing aggression, and both of those were ones that had multiple swarms. Basically, genetics where I wasn't grafting and adding in, from known calm stock, but they were actually hives that I pinged as being slightly aggressive last year, and it turns out the daughters of those slightly aggressive ones were like, whoa, spicy. And then also similarly on the mite washes, some of them, looking at the notes further, they were daughters of colonies. They swarmed. So in other words, we have an F2 generation from a colony that did not look good on the mite washes last year. So there I am, letting them breed mite, mite friendly stock rather than mite resistant. So that's where I feel like coming back at this time of year, especially when things are not great, and and it's really telling, the resistant bees versus non-resistant. I mean, gosh, the non-resistant ones just look, there's mites all through the brood, and the resistant ones are very, very different. It's pretty cool to go through 200 pupa and just like, dang, no mites. Good problem, although very time consuming. I was up till almost midnight last night hunting through brood. And yeah, but I think it's worth it in the end. The other thing I was thinking about is, as far as breeding goes, I feel like I'm finding a big difference switching over to selecting my own breeders versus bringing in artificially inseminated breeders from other people that are selecting. I'm not sure why, but I have some guesses. And I think part of that is when you buy an artificially inseminated queen from someone, let's say, who's breeding for treatment-free stock, that actual queen that you're grafting off of has not been tested. Her parents were, but perhaps something, not every bee ends up being identical to their parents, and maybe I was getting, just by pure luck, ones that weren't as good, but I was having much higher variability in mite resistance and much higher variability in aggression. Both of those I really don't care for. So anyway, it's been really fun to shift over. Nothing's perfect. I have lots of colonies I have raised myself that I dislike, for various reasons. So it's, open mating is probably much more variable, obviously, than doing artificial insemination. But I think it has a lot of strengths of diversity and obviously just ease for me as a beekeeper, trying to keep up. Yeah, so it's been pretty exciting though to see that difference. In last year I was selecting mite resistant queens from my whole operation which was mostly daughters of colonies that came from artificially inseminated queens, or were queens I'd brought in from people breeding for mite resistance or other reasons. And it was kind of almost depressing in a way, watching mite numbers rise faster than I wanted to, and then going and doing the Harbo assays and having lots of failures. And this year, not everything's rosy, obviously, but here I took home 9 frames, 2 of which I thought were probably going to fail. And in fact, 2 did fail. The other 7 were way better than I expected. They were all fully resistant in the Harbo assay. Of course, I will admit that one of them that I thought was going to fail didn't. She was great. And one of them that I thought was going to do great failed. So that's the joy of breeding, and then also looking into various different facets of the varroa mite reproduction. I think mite washes are super useful. They give you a good idea what's happening on the bees. And then doing something like the Harbo assay, where you're going into the cells and seeing how many mites are actually reproducing in the brood, even more useful, but also way more time consuming. So that's where I think both work really well. And yeah, now I've got 9 frames of comb to take to another yard and pull brood to test and replace with the comb that's in my van. And this afternoon, when it's really hot and miserable, I'll be inside a cool shop pulling pupa into the late hours of the evening, likely. But yeah, so it feels like a never-ending test, but based on hitting one bee yard at a time. I really like the idea of finding resistant stock at out yards, because that heightens my ability to have more genetic diversity in my operation. These are open mated queens, so they are mating in different areas, and I think that's, well, I hope that's good. Maybe it also makes it harder because I'm not at such a controlled breeding group, but a lot of my out yards have other out yards of mine nearby. I kind of have had bees here for a long time. In fact, actually, there's been bees in this location since 1988, when my family moved here from West Virginia. We were, the bees came in the back of a U-Haul in a tractor bucket, sealed up the hive with screen, I guess, and brought them here. Obviously, those genetics are long gone because varroa mite moved in, and I remember my father's bees just dying left and right, and the challenges of that. It's really exciting to feel like there's more and more people moving past treatments. I've done both treatment-free and full treatment, and now I'm kind of a mixed bag, but it's really fun just feeling some hope in the mite-resistant bee world. I think there's a lot of good movement happening, and yeah, we'll see. But it's good fun and challenging, and I'm gonna go pack up here and head on to the next bee yard and get some more brood to test. All right, one day later, August 27th, I'm here at my Buck Mountain yard, which is my newest yard. It's very young hives mostly that I brought in early in the spring. A lot of them were overwintered at other locations, and some were started here. Been doing mite washes in the past, and yesterday came through to grab some frames to take home to do Harbo assays. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get quite as many samples as I'd hoped. My daughter got a little ill feeling, and so we left it with 5 samples, and not as good rosy as my Sugar Hollow yard, unfortunately. 2 of them were abject failures in the mite regard. Lots of reproductive mites, so they are getting requeened today. I just found the queens and got rid of them, and they're floating in rubbing alcohol for swarm lure next year. And I brought young queens that I raised this late summer at my home yard in little nukes, caged those, and brought them here to requeen. I don't know, it's a challenge. I really struggle with my home yard. I've got way too many nukes, which leads to kind of nutritional stress in the summer. A lot of them shut down on brood this year, which was a bit scary in early August. Now, they're starting back up with pollen coming in now, but what the benefit of having all those little nukes that are too small for winter, but they all had queens in them, mated queens. So now as I go through bee yards and find colonies that I was hoping would be potential good breeding stock, but they're proving to be not mite resistant, I requeen them. And that basically is my method of getting rid of older queens that are less likely to have a successful wintering. In the past, that was always when I treated heavily with oxalic acid through the summer, almost all my losses were always old queens or swarms I caught. And if you think about it, a swarm is going to be a young or an older queen who's come through winter. So anyway, this kind of allows me to get young queens into my colonies before winter, and hopefully also shift the genetics faster. So rather than waiting until next spring to requeen them, I'm dropping in these here with the vertical bricks have the queens I just dropped. I'm dropping in the new genetics now. So next spring, there's going to be good drones for my home yard, which is about 1.5 miles away. And that's kind of the purpose of this bee yard, is mostly for drone saturation around my home bee yard. Trying to, shift the genetics, and drones seem to matter a lot. Yesterday I mentioned that I feel like I am getting more movement as far as VSH with selecting my own breeders versus the purchased artificially inseminated queens I've been buying. And I'm thinking about it more, like that could be partially the better breeders, but it also could be that I'm slowly shifting the drone pool in the area, and my earlier open mated queens off the other breeders weren't as successful just because I didn't have as much VSH drones in the area. And then I'm slowly upping that over the years, and maybe now I'm getting better success. That said, here I grabbed 5 samples. 2 of them total failures. 2 of them were Harbo score 2, so they had a few reproductive mites, not many. 1 of them I requeened. The other one I didn't. It's this colony here. And let's see if I can get angled. Yeah, yeah. So that one there, and I'm keeping it because it made 6 supers of honey, and gentle, pretty much everything I like, except not quite as mite resistant as I want. But I'll keep that as pretty good drones. And then the only one that actually did really well in the mite check was this little nuke here. And what tickled me about that is to do a sample and have most of them not do well, but then the one that does well is actually a breeder I picked late last summer, and this was one of my last grafts in the summer. And it's just pretty cool to come through and find that an overwintered daughter from that breeder, I call her number 43, pole 3, it is showing I couldn't find any reproductive mites in the brood until I ran out of brood. So that's pretty awesome. Yeah, so I'm going to go through now and oxalic acid vapor on the ones that did not show resistance, and then other ones that have brand new queens that are I haven't decided to test yet. But the goal being to keep my mite levels low so I have good overwintering success, and then a few of these will stay treatment free that are showing resistance. Oh, and I had 2 here, like this one here, my Star Fox line. I couldn't take a brood sample for the Harbo assay because you need older pupa that's pretty close to hatching, basically, so that there's time for the mites to reproduce in the pupa. And in this colony, they took a brood break. Just wasn't much going on in early August, so they took a brood break, and I come in to grab a sample, and I can't find brood that's quite old enough. Got really close, so in 2 days I'll be able to come back and grab a sample. So of course I'm not going to treat that because I want to keep it pure until I do a Harbo assay, and if they succeed, she stays, and if they don't, she gets requeened, I guess. So all right, well, I hope that's interesting and useful, and I'm going to put on my mask and get to treating. And there's a yellow jacket on my face. Yeehaw. Take care.